Today we're reviewing a YouTube script from Solace Fox titled You Don't Need to Know How It's Already Turning in Your Favor, a monologue arguing listeners should stop stressing over logistics and trust a larger intelligence to orchestrate their goal. The piece relies heavily on reiterating the central thesis from different angles, rather than building a progressive argument that deepens the listener's understanding.
Yeah, the main weakness here is that the script loops through the exact same concept of surrendering control over and over, but just uses different metaphors.
Right. You have the planting of a seed, and then suddenly it's a package delivery, and then a caterpillar.
And while the tone is soothing, it runs a massive risk of stagnating because moving from the seed to the package delivery just essentially repeats the same emotional beat.
Which is just, you don't do the work, the background process does.
Exactly.
So the circularity makes the listener feel like they're just being told what to feel, rather than being guided through a genuine realization.
Yeah, it just spins its wheel. So the suggestion for improvement is to restructure the flow to move linearly from reassurance to methodology and then finally to transformation.
Instead of presenting four metaphors that mean the exact same thing, select the strongest one to anchor the beginning and use the subsequent sections to explore the implications of that metaphor.
Right, we need a clear, linear ascent, not a flat circle. Let's look at some concrete examples of how to do that.
Well, you could start with the seed and photosynthesis metaphor to establish the core premise that nature does the work.
That's a strong biological hook.
And then, instead of jumping to the package delivery next,
Which is super passive. Right. It's so disconnected from the biology theme. Instead of that, move directly to the section on internal guidance, where the script mentions that strange sensation in your chest.
oh, I see what you mean. So you frame that chest sensation as the root system of the seed.
Yes, exactly. Now we aren't just jumping between unrelated images. We're linking the original metaphor directly to the human experience.
The roots are blindly feeling for water, which is a great visual for not knowing the how.
And this is just one way to solve it, but doing it this way means you save the butterfly and caterpillar metaphor strictly for the climax.
Right, so you don't mix it in with the mechanics discussion earlier.
Exactly. It shows the final result, which creates a proper beginning with planting, a middle with growing and feeling, and an end with emerging.
The script offers powerful emotional permission to let go, but lacks sufficient concrete scaffolding to help the listener distinguish between trusting the process and passive inaction.
Yeah, the weakness is that the text tells you to move with what you already know and follow directional guidance, but the examples provided are still incredibly abstract.
Like knowing which conversations feel alive versus draining.
Right, which sounds nice, but a skeptical listener might view this as dangerous advice to simply stop planning entirely. The line about not giving the seed a detailed timeline could easily be misread as don't have a calendar.
Yeah, if I'm a freelancer, I can't just wait for a package. I need to know what moving with the flow looks like on a Tuesday when rent is due.
So the suggestion here is to ground the spiritual advice in practical decision-making frameworks. The script needs to bridge the gap between not knowing the how and taking the next step.
It has to show what moving with the flow looks like in a professional or creative context, not just an emotional one.
Right. As a concrete example, let's expand on the section about conversations that feel alive. We need to add a tangible scenario.
You could contrast the feeling of forcing a networking call with a prestigious contact, which feels draining and contracting, against a spontaneous chat with a peer that leads to a surprising idea.
Yes, that feels expanding and alive. It gives the listener an actual rubric for their calendar. It turns vibes into strategy.
And we can refine the instruction manual metaphor, too. Right now, it just says you don't need the manual.
Instead of just saying you don't need it, suggest that the listener is responsible for the inputs, like availability, willingness, and walking away from toxicity, while the universe manages the outputs.
That's a huge shift from do nothing to do your part and only your part.
Exactly. And looking at the text where it mentions the toxic relationship that dissolved without dramatic confrontation, we need to add a sentence about the specific action the listener actually did take.
Like setting a boundary or stopping the effort to fix the other person?
Right. That specific action, the withdrawal of energy, is what allowed the dissolution to happen naturally. It wasn't magic.
It empowers the listener by showing that doing nothing is actually an active choice to stop pushing.
The argument inadvertently disempowers the listener by using absolute language that denies their past agency in successful moments.
Yes, this is a big one. The weakness is found in those rhetorical questions where the script asks, did you control meeting that person? or did you orchestrate that random conversation with a hard no?
While this trying to prove the universe's power, this absolute negation can totally alienate high-achieving listeners who absolutely did put themselves in the room to meet that person.
It creates a false binary where either you control everything or you control nothing.
If I spent 5 years getting a degree to get into that room, and the script tells me I had no control over meeting my business partner there, I'm going to feel dismissed.
So the suggestion is to reframe the argument to validate the listener's participation. We need to shift the focus from "you did nothing" to "you couldn't have predicted the outcome of what you did."
Acknowledge that their effort matters, but the mechanics of the breakthrough are beyond their scope.
Let's look at a concrete example for this. The resume versus availability section currently says the universe doesn't require your resume.
Which again dismisses their hard work. We should rewrite it to say something like, the universe uses your resume, but hires you for a role you haven't applied for yet.
Oh, I love that. It validates their preparation while opening them up to surprise.
And we can modify the section where it says you didn't have the roadmap before you started walking.
Acknowledge that the listener did start walking. They put on the shoes. They chose a general direction. Credit the listener for the initiation of movement while crediting the shift for the destination.
Exact. It's about recognizing the partner. This is also how we fix the part about people who seem to have it all figured out.
Right. Avoid simply saying they are just better at trusting. Suggest that their planning is actually just a form of preparation for luck.
That respects the listener's desire to be prepared while completely maintaining the theme of surrender. You redefine planning not as control, but as readiness.
It gives the whole piece so much more traction. It takes a floaty script and gives it a spine.
And the clarity heightens the spiritual impact because when a listener feels their actual daily struggles are being addressed, the message moves from a nice thought to a survival strategy.
Which brings us back to the core of our critique today. First, we need to create a linear narrative arc, moving from planting to sensing to becoming, rather than looping through synonymous metaphors.
Second, operationalize the concepts with specific examples of professional or interpersonal choices so the audience knows the difference between forcing a connection and allowing one.
And third, validate the listener's agency. They control the input, while the universe controls the throughput.
We want to invite the writer to revise the script with these grounded elements and submit it again for a follow-up critique.
This has been an incredibly productive session. We can't wait to see the next draft.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Keep writing and refining. This is the critique.